for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
On this week's episode of Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, we discuss young Americans performing in top leagues in Europe, along with the Portugal friendly, and some discussion about Bruce Arena and his comments on Fox. Matt Pentz and Corey Roepken join the show to discuss Seattle-Houston series that is coming up after a long MLS layover. Finally, we discuss the series between #SaveTheCrew and Toronto FC and other big MLS news. All this on this week's episode of Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod.
Oh, good day to everybody. Welcome, Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. I'm Steven Jodrin. I'm on Kafai. The team's here. We're excited. Another great episode. MLS is back after taking a century off. And, of course, subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Uncle Sam's Soccer Pod. Armand, what a week. What a week. Massive, massive news.
In what? Like just overall
or just in overall? Overall. I mean, in the world of soccer, it was a crazy week. Remember, think about it. Since we've talked, Italy failed to qualify for the World Cup.
True.
Zlatan Ibrahimovic comes back from a major injury.
True.
You have this expansion draft coming up. It's expansion teams coming up, the announcement for that.
Yeah, we actually had a lot of news since.
Yeah, no, it's quite a bit. And then you have all these young guys. But let's go back to last Tuesday where we played the most meaningless friendly in one of many meaningless friendlies in the next couple of years.
I think it was a boost our self-esteem.
Honestly, okay, let's just begin. Overall thoughts of the game.
I mean, it's really hard to get anything out of it, but I mean, I thought really Weston McKennie played really well in his national team debut. I mean, you saw him in a position that he doesn't play at Schalke, and it was a little bit more advanced. And I remember talking to people at FC Dallas who've covered a team who think that he's actually better off as in a more advanced position. So we saw him play that. We saw him score, which I thought was fantastic. We saw some young guys play. I don't know really what else you expect. I mean, McKennie played well. I think the McKennie-Acosta partnership was really nice. And I also thought that Ethan Horvath messed up a lot.
You know what's so funny? You and I were talking. We thought Hamid would get the start. I wanted to see Horvath. Horvath gets in, and he just shoots himself in the foot.
Yeah, it was a blunder, I mean, to be honest. And Hamid came in, played well. To be honest, I thought, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's a good start. But, I mean, like I said, it's meaningless. I mean, we can't. It's really hard to take anything out of that match except that our future will be fine future-wise. I mean, that's what you take from a friendly. I mean, what else can you take from there? We're 2022 World Cup champs? Like, come on.
I mean, you know, here's my big takeaway. Bruce Arena screwed up.
Oh, you're taking away from the whole... You know I'm going to the game. Or are you talking about, like, the game, or are you talking about, like, what he said?
No, we're going to get to Bruce Arena's comments. Don't worry. Now, I'm saying... We'll talk about his comments, and I just coincides with it. But I think Bruce Arena really screwed up the system because... This is my big takeaway. We have to be very careful with U.S. soccer not to make changes for making changes' sake, just because we failed. We need to actually make sure we resolve the problems of U.S. soccer and not just change crap because that's what we want to do. Okay? We've seen that in politics. I don't want to go down that road, but we've just seen and witnessed the last 18 months change for change's sake. Some of it has worked out for the better. Some of it has been an absolute blunder. Okay?
No, you're right.
So U.S. soccer needs to realize we do have everybody's like, we don't have a generation of young guys. No, Bruce Arena never called him up. Okay? Yeah. He just didn't.
Look at Weston McKennie. I thought he played really well. I thought he played better than some of the players on our national team right now.
I don't. Why didn't he call him up over the summer and say, you know what? There are 2 roster spots. They're probably not going to play, but at least they're on the squad. At least people are going to be like, oh, maybe Weston McKennie gets a sub on. Maybe blah 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 comes on. No, we get screwed with a bunch of old guys, and these old guys are so comfortable that's so aggravating. And these young players get so screwed. So screwed because they're not playing at the World Cup at age 20. They'll play at their first World Cup at age 24. Okay? The World Cup is every 4 years. That is a huge detriment to the development of the team and the team chemistry. Normally, a generation has probably 2 World Cups at max to do something. Sometimes you get lucky with 3, depending on how young the squad is. Look at Argentina. They're done after 2018. France, they're about to start. They have this World Cup and maybe the next one. After that, there's a new generation coming through. The United States, they could have had 3 World Cup cycles. Now they're only down to 2.
Yeah, and they missed the World Cup in the worst time possible, to be honest with you. MLS is growing, and we could talk all day about that, but I think from our standpoint, at least for right now, we need to talk about what we saw over the weekend, which is a lot of young Americans playing in the top leagues in Europe.
Let's go through the list.
We had Shaq Moore. He actually played a little bit in the FC Dallas Academy. Then he went on.
Is he another FC Dallas Academy pro?
Well, he played within the program for about 4 months.
Hey, you know what? You take credit for that, FC Dallas.
You take credit. But he went on trial in Spain and got a deal with Levante, and now he's starting for them.
20 years old.
20 years old. We saw Keaton Parks, a friend of the show. We recently had a talk about him and his career. You can go find that in our archives.
Yes.
He subbed on the 70th minute or 71st minute for Benfica in their cup match and didn't look out of place. We saw Jonathan Gonzalez of Monterrey, the center mid that's 18 years old, and Monterrey is first place in Liga MX, and they're going into the Liguilla as the top seed. So good for them. We saw McKennie play well with Schalke, and we saw Yedlin and Cameron Carter-Vickers get some assists in some English action. So we saw plenty of good young talent make their mark over last weekend.
Absolutely, and we're definitely missing a couple players off the list, but those are the big names that we thought were worth mentioning. Tweet us at UncSamSoccerPod if there's another player that you thought was worthy enough, and maybe tweet us a name that you want to see come on the show. We just had Keaton Parks. Maybe we'll keep the momentum going with getting a young guy on, and then maybe they can get a debut. How's that sound, Armand?
I'm all aboard. I would really this list. I think the 2 I already want to talk to would be Shaq Moore, Jonathan Gonzalez. To be honest with you, because Jonathan Gonzalez has been in the middle of this whole Mexico or USA thing. Looks like he's chosen USA, but being 18 years old and for a top team in Liga MX, it's no small feat. And then you look at Shaq Moore. I don't think people talk about him that much, and there's competition where he plays at a right back. But could he make a push? Maybe push out Yedlin? We don't know. We don't know.
No, we absolutely don't. And this gets to what Bruce Arena said on the broadcast of the USA-Portugal friendly on FS1. And I want to ask you, Armand, why the hell did FS1 have Bruce Arena come in and talk? Why?
Well,
and why did Bruce Arena accept that?
Well, I'm playing devil's advocate. I think they brought him on to provide insight on what happened, and I think some people were interested from what he said. Why did he do certain things that led to United States' World Cup failure? I think it's interesting. It's an interesting side. Arena accepting, I think just kind of a little naive that about the magnitude of what happened. I think it shows that he's kind of in a bubble, and that it shows really prevalent that he was in a bubble of complacency with the national team. And it's a common trend we've seen from Arena and a lot of people in U.S. soccer. They've almost repeated the same things multiple times. But accepting it, if I was him, I really wouldn't accept it. I feel like, I don't really want to come on a show, talk about this. We can have a sit-down interview, but I don't think a discussion right now is appropriate if I were him. But,
it's just dumb. It's dumb.
It was scary.
It was scary because Ben Valentine, Goal.com, getting the quotes from Bruce Arena. We'll link out the article because it's interesting. But Brina was asked about the idea that the U.S. was not doing enough to discover young players and dismissed that thought, arguing the U.S. is not broken and talent on display at the youth levels is proof. I do not agree with the idea there are young, talented players falling through the cracks of the U.S. system at all. I think all the talented players involved in the systems, we need to do a better job of developing them. We see a variety of levels at the youth competition. We have very talented players on the field. We look 4 or 5 years later and we can't find them. When we look 4 or 5 years later, we can't find them. And I think Bruce Arena is dumb because he should have called up a younger. If we would not be in this predicament with the discovery of youth talent players if he had just called up a couple more young guys.
No, you're right, and the idea that players don't fall through the cracks is, I would say, a myth. I did mention this on my Twitter that Parks actually never didn't play for an academy side. He had the opportunity to travel due to his club coach. He had the opportunity to go across the pond and to try out in Portugal, and he impressed some teams, and that's how he made his way up to the Benfica. That's where he started. Now, imagine if you're somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to travel across the seas. So there's obviously some players that you're going to miss. This country is so big, and when people say fall through the cracks, you can't get every good player. You generally can't. This country's huge.
For example, Dion Lewis of New England Patriots, the running back. He jumped around teams. Look how talented he looks for the New England Patriots. That's talent fall through. Sometimes players are just in the wrong system. Sometimes they just need change for shakes of, that change of scenery. They just need that to the development. So I think it's really hard because the generation of young guys is, remember, MLS is 22 years old. These young guys are 20 years old. The soccer culture is only starting to sprout, and you're seeing the young guys finally make their mark on U.S. soccer. It's just a failure of the young guys, and what really wasn't when we first chatted, Armand, when Bruce Arena got hired. What was his job?
To be a stopgap?
He failed monumentally because the stopgap was not necessarily just to qualify to the World Cup. It was that stopgap to get the young guys just old enough and mature enough to make their mark, and the old guys to say goodbye to. And the old guys failed to keep the trail, or the fire burning for the young guys to bring in their wood and start the fire and grow that, for lack of a better explanation.
No, you're right. But at the same time, we do agree that Arena was put in a little tough predicament to do that because he was focused on qualifying for the World Cup.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think we both agree with that 100%. I think the issue was with Arena that you could tell with these quotes that he's relatively stubborn, that he feels like the United States has nothing wrong with them, and to a degree. He is, to a degree, some people who said United States should make drastic changes, I think are right. To a degree, we are seeing these pushes for promotion, relegation, and seasonal changes. I don't think the MLS in the United States really needs that yet. But I do think there needs to be some sort of change in the way that, the system of, pay to play. And people who say pay to play is a myth. I mean, from where we lived and resided, Steven, it wasn't a myth because everyone in our area was wealthy enough to afford it. But I'm 100% sure it's obvious that there's in other places across, especially in some urban areas, that there's obviously going to be some sort of issue.
Absolutely. And it's an issue, but has Bruce Arena lost it? Because I'm reading from the article, continuing, he specifically pointed out changes from the lineup that defeated Jamaica in the 2017 Gold Cup final to the 2-0 September qualifier loss against Costa Rica. The U.S. made multiple changes to the team that beat Jamaica, bringing in European-based players Christian Pulisic, Fabian Johnson, Jeff Cameron, Tim Ream, and Bobby Wood. I think a mistake we made in the Costa Rica game was changing our team from the Gold Cup, where we went away from the starting 11 that won a Gold Cup and brought in 5 players from the Europe and